I'll admit, when season 1 of Andor came out, I was not a big fan. There were things I liked about it, but I thought the show was overrated. I'll also admit that I was in a bad place with Star Wars at the time. Disney's Star Wars tenure has been a rocky one, as we all know. Season 1 came out at a bad time. It was just months after the Kenobi and Boba shows came out, and many Star Wars fans were bitter with that disappointment, and I was one of them. I was upset for a few more reasons. I was angry at the fact that Andor had such a huge budget, and because of this, the show was greenlit for 2 seasons. It drove me crazy to see a show like Andor get 24 episodes while a show like Kenobi was crammed into just 6 episodes. Ultimately, I thought Disney could have made other shows focusing on other lore elements in the franchise. There's so many characters and time periods that are much more interesting than the origin story of Cassian Andor. And look, I'll admit I was probably a little petty with punishing this show for the issues Disney has created within Star Wars. But I did think Andor was truly boring at times. The pacing bothered me. It was too slow, and I felt like much more could have been explored with the early days of the rebellion and Cassian himself. Disney just loves to sideline the character whose name is in the title of the show and put in other characters and have the spotlight on them. I appreciated Andor for the fact that it did provide a different way for Star Wars to do storytelling. We got a much more mature version of Star Wars storytelling, something I want more of. Tony Gilroy took what he created in season 1 and expanded upon it in season 2. I was always planning on watching season 2, but man, this show blew it out of the water, and I will admit I loved it. So in today's video, I want to review Andor season 2. So the setup for Andor Season 2 was very interesting. We got 12 more episodes, and the episodes were divided up into 4 3-episode arc storylines. I was originally not a fan of this because I thought they were just going to rush through everything. Typically, TV shows have their seasons play out in a matter of months, not weeks. A show running for 10, 12, or even 15 weeks allows for fans to go on a journey. It allows for tension and speculation and hype to build up. That hype builds up while people are waiting for next week's episode to drop, and then you have podcasters and content creators coming out with content and having a great time speculating on what's coming next and just recapping everything that's been happening so far in the season. And honestly, I was stressed about finding a way to watch all 3 episodes as quickly as possible because stuff gets spoiled on the internet very fast. I ended up watching all 3 episodes in one sitting in each of the weeks for 2 reasons. One, I usually do a pretty good job of watching stuff as soon as possible, but this show had me hooked. The story arcs were excellent. The buildup of both the plot and tension was great. I enjoyed the pacing of the show this time around. Yes, it still has that slower pace feel, but there were other factors that led to me enjoying it much more this time around. The writing was excellent. I thought the writing in terms of dialogue and story blocking was great. A huge shout out to all the actors, actresses, and writers. I thought everyone did a great job and evoked a lot of emotions in dialogue-heavy scenes. Star Wars is not known for great dialogue. Yes, there's a lot of famous quotes that we like to recite every day, but dialogue in these movies is usually very cringy. I have been wanting a Star Wars show that had that HBO show feel to it. I wanted something that reminded me of Game of Thrones or The Sopranos. It's not just the fighting and the deaths that make these shows super memorable, it's the other things. There's sometimes arguments or character conversations that are both funny, emotional, traumatizing, whatever. You get that in shows like Game of Thrones and The Sopranos, and we actually got that in Andor itself. Andor provided us with the complexity and maturity that Star Wars storytelling lacks a lot of times. Season 2 started off with a bang with Cassian stealing that TIE Avenger. The tension and action gets you immersed right away, and the visuals in this show are phenomenal. It's another thing that picked up right away from Season 1. The only time I really had an issue with pacing in this show was within those first 3 episodes. It was a slow build-up for multiple things. You have Cassian escaping with the Avenger, and then he finds himself stuck with a bunch of rebels battling it out with each other. Then you have Bix, Brasso, and company living on a farming planet while hiding from the Empire. Mon Mothma is on Chandrilla trying to prepare for her daughter's wedding while trying to figure out what to do since Tay Kalma's financial investments were failing. Now, I don't fault the show for a slow burn at the beginning as it begins to set the stage for the entire season, but it did feel a little bland at times and some things kind of got carried away. Like, I didn't really care that much about the wedding. I didn't really care that much about these silly rebels battling it out in the jungle at night and yelling at each other and shooting at each other and being reckless. I will say things got better every week with every new arc that came about. And everything really centers on the planet Gorman. The Empire is mining Gorman for its rare minerals, and the people there are not happy. The Gorman resistance grows, and they begin to protest what's happening, and they are eventually attacked at their big protest. Attacking is putting it lightly. They were literally slaughtered, and this becomes the final spark to fully ignite the rebellion and set things into motion for not only Rogue One, but the entire galactic civil war itself. One thing I loved about Season 2 is how much it draws from World War II. I'm a history fan, and I really love learning about that World War II time period. The Empire is a straight depiction of the Nazis, and the ISB itself is a spitting image of the Gestapo, which was the department within the Nazi organization that was tasked with finding spies, rebels, and other groups that the Nazis were persecuting during their reign. And the Gormans, well, they basically remind us of the French and the Dutch resistance, defending their homelands against the Nazis. So yeah, I really loved the parallels between Andor and World War II, and the tension that built up during the Gorman protest that eventually exploded with that battle was perfect. You know it's done right when you're sitting there on your couch, developing your own anxiety within you. The title of this show makes you think that it's all about Cassian Andor. It is, but it isn't. I honestly loved the entire cast of characters in this show: Bix, Luthen, Clea, Mon Mothma, Dedra, Krennic, and even Cyril. They were all awesome. Stellan Skarsgård was phenomenal in his role as Luthen. Clea becoming a breakout star near the end of the season when they put the spotlight on her. When we saw her and her origin story with Luthen, I hated Cyril in the first season because he was literally just a freaking weirdo. He was literally a stalker slash simp for Dedra, and then he'd go home and get repeatedly humiliated by his mother while eating bowls of cereal. There was nothing cool or intimidating about that character at all. His story arc in Season 2 was a lot better. His growing conflict about the Empire that he stands for was awesome to see as well, and just when you wonder if he's going to change sides just after he leaves Dedra and, shit hits the fan at the protest, he crosses paths with Andor and he meets his demise. Now, I want to throw in two quick complaints I did have about the show in regards to character screen time. In episode 6, it ended in badass fashion with Bix and Cassian breaking into Gorst's office. That's the guy that interrogated and tortured Bix in Season 1. Bix gets her revenge finally on him by using his own torture device on him, and as Bix and Cassian are leaving the building, they blow it up. Now, that's like this quick side story that was awesome, but it was super quick, and it literally was done in like a minute or two at the very end of that episode. And that's something that I think would be nice to see more of. And it's another way of having Cassian on the screen longer and giving us more adventure time with both Cassian and Bix. It's a great scene nonetheless, though. Another thing that kind of bothered me near the end of the show, Dedra gets arrested, right? She failed to bring Luthen in alive and in good health. The interrogation scene between her and Krennic was fantastic. Again, that was well written and well put together. But the end of Dedra's story seemed forced. She's arrested for obtaining highly classified information regarding the Death Star, so she was suspected of being a rebel spy. You notice the confusion in my voice? Like, this just comes out of nowhere. Now, it's one thing to get punished by the Empire for failing, because we know they rule even their own people with an iron fist, but just throwing that out there during the interrogation scene, it's like, what if this was something that we saw they play that out over time in the season through different episodes and different moments. Let's see her mistake. Like, I don't really think there's a shock and awe here with the way that they did this, because it just came out of left field. Sometimes time jumps can lead to forced story points like this. Now, again, it doesn't ruin the show or anything. I just think seeing more of what led to Dedra's demise would have been cool. But I get the overall point. Everyone at the ISB is literally getting punished for failing, despite all the hard work they do for the Empire. And in the end, the Empire could care less about them if they fail. I want to take a moment to address that hot topic involving Bix too. At the beginning of the season, early on, an Imperial officer tried flirting with Bix on a few occasions, and he eventually went too far. He tried to assault her sexually. This sparked an early season debate amongst the fandom. Many did not like this scene and thought this scene went too far, since Star Wars is for kids. Now, I love how people say that Star Wars is for kids all the time. It really isn't, but some felt this scene doesn't belong in Star Wars, and I personally don't have a problem with the scene. What we saw in the scene was Bix fighting the officer. She fought back once he began to get physical with her, but we never actually saw that terrible action being committed. I get why people don't like the scene, but I probably would have had more of an issue with it if we saw much more than what we actually saw. There's other shows and movies out there that, this wasn't like the beginning of a Law and Order episode where they show you the crime that's being committed before obviously the whole police investigation and trial takes place, later on in the episode. I thought what they showed was fine overall, and I want Star Wars to have a more adult-like feel to it. I want more mature storytelling and themes. I mean, look at what we've already had in the past. Jabba tried to make Leia his sex slave in Episode 6. Why do you think he put her in that bikini outfit? Not just because it was hot on Tatooine. We have seen Anakin Skywalker get burnt to a crisp with all but one limb gone. We have seen Darth Vader kill kids. We have seen the Jedi get massacred. The Empire is based off of the Nazis, one of, if not the worst group of people to ever exist in the history of mankind. And Star Wars has never been rated G. Even when Star Wars fans get serious storytelling, they still complain. That's a little side rant, but again, I understand why some people aren't fond of a scene like this, so, it is what it is. Alright, so let me move on to my final thoughts. I really appreciate what Tony Gilroy did with this series. I'll acknowledge that Season 1 was good, but I really think this show took off in Season 2. This is the most gritty and realistic Star Wars project that Disney has ever created. The production quality and powerful performances given by every character really heightened the intense atmosphere. The 3-episode story arc structure ended up working out, but that structure had us missing a few story beats that could have used more screen time, like what I mentioned earlier in the cases of Bix and Dedra. And really, Cassian could have been used more in the spotlight as well, I could argue at times. And honestly, I still really do like that old school TV show style of getting one new episode a week. Going on a 12-week journey with this season would have been awesome. Content creators would have had a field day with making content and building up hype. Going on a journey for that long would have felt very rewarding for this show. I'm just glad we finally got a Star Wars show that featured excellent dialogue that paired nicely with fantastic performances given by everyone in the cast. Luthen's showdown with Dedra was amazing. Bix's goodbye video to Cassian was emotional, and then we saw her with their child. Krennic's interrogation with Dedra was, man, that was intense. That was awesome, especially when he put his thumb under the top of her head. And, Cyril's argument with Dedra, I thought that was excellent too when he finally reached his breaking point. And then you see Dedra get emotional when she goes into that room by herself. I mean, all this writing, all this acting was just on par, nonstop. And Luthen had many great moments with different characters like Lonnie, Mon Mothma, Cassian, Clea. They were all stellar moments, and I still think about Luthen's sacrifice speech from Season 1. That's probably the best speech we've ever seen in Star Wars, honestly. And on to my last point, I totally get why people don't care about Andor or Star Wars at this point. I feel the same way for the most part. I am really upset with what Disney Star Wars is, but I still like the franchise enough to give these projects a chance, and Andor is worth the watch. And I've learned, I did this when I argued with everybody back in my Ahsoka review days when I came out with that one video bashing the fan base that I'm usually siding with. It's like, don't punish these characters and these stories and these actors and writers specifically for the faults of others within the franchise and within the company at Disney. And honestly, I hope they take the success of this show and they implement its ways of storytelling into future projects. Give me more mature storytelling and complexity, please. And I'm totally cool with Tony Gilroy sticking around to work on future projects. Maybe his directing style can work in projects that feature other important lore and time periods. I'd love to see him work on a project that features the Jedi, the Sith, and other Force elements. I mean, I'd take a political drama type show about the Jedi Council and their conflict with other people in the galaxy, or even them with the Sith. What were the Sith doing before the Rule of Two really became a thing, years before the saga? So yeah, I mean, the sky's the limit with what Tony Gilroy could do. And I'll say it, guys, Andor is one of the best Star Wars shows. It really is. Thanks for checking out the video. Feel free to like and subscribe for more, and let me know your thoughts on Andor. Let's have a conversation about this down below. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.